off that, he would screw up the details, he wouldn't get it right, Never take for granted the lessons that you teach your children, because the lessons that my parents taught me are actually being fulfilled in my life, and I'm 30 years old now. Chris and I were in a very tight situation. I'm sorry, I am nervous, that's why I'm crying. We were in a very tight situation. God was opening doors like abundantly. We didn't have time for all the doors that God was opening for us, and we were so excited to be involved and do our homeless outreach and do everything that we were trying to do, but we lived pretty far away. We lived on Perdido, and it was 25 minutes in, 25 minutes back home. Obviously a lot of gas. Gas was close to $4 a gallon then. And we were just struggling, and my parents always taught us, be faithful. Be faithful, be faithful, be faithful. Never stop being faithful. And there's, many of lessons that I learned as a child in experience of God being faithful to my family. So Chris and I just said, okay, we're going to start praying. God's going to open the door. And there were so many times we didn't know how we were going to get back home because we didn't have gas to get back home. But we came to church, and God always made a way. God always provided, always. There's never been a time that God didn't provide. But you know what? It was because we were here. It's because we were giving our tithes. We have our children in Sunday school. We have our children in Power Church every Wednesday night. And it's not about attendance, but it's about that faithfulness. It's about that submission. If you're not submitted, God can't do anything with you. God can't do anything for you. And that was a lesson that Chris and I were learning, for sure. But we started praying. We put a fleece before God. We asked our close family and friends to pray with us. And we just kept praying, and it was really a lesson because God was teaching us to be faithful and to be fruitful. And we were trying to be fruitful as much as we could, but it was definitely a struggle. So one morning, I just decided, you know what? We were renting a house out in Perdido. And it was a gorgeous house. It's 1,600 square feet, and it was beautiful, and the kids loved it. It was amazing. But it's just not where our heart was. Our heart was here. Our heart wasn't in our house. And so I just, off of a whim, decided to email our realtor and say, look, I'm going to be honest, we're struggling. I know that we're under a lease. We were under a lease for another 8 months. And I said, you can't break a lease. It's a signed contract. And so I just emailed her and said, we're struggling. I said, we really want to be closer into town. And I said, is there anything, any room, anything that can be done? So she actually didn't get back with me for 2 more weeks. When she emailed me, she said that she emailed the owner. The owner actually dropped our rent by $75 and actually decided to put our house back up for rent. And we still had 8 more months. That was the first door. And so we were so excited. I was just beyond excited. I started packing. We started planning. We started looking for places. We actually had a couple come and look at it during the day. And I was just, so ecstatic. I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. They came and looked at it, was so excited. They never called back. And everything fell through. And I was so upset. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to get into that place of doubt. I'm not going to get into that place of doubting God and what He's going to do and His promises. So we stood fast, and we were still fasting and praying, and more people came and looked at it. And everybody that came and looked at it never called back. Never turned in their paperwork. Never called back. Nothing ever happened. Every single door shut. And that was one of the worst times, because it was like, God, we had this promise, and now every door is being shut. And I did get discouraged. But you know what? I didn't stop praying. I didn't stop fasting. I didn't stop coming to church. I stayed steadfast as possible. I got a call we were trying to move out during the summer so that we could get our boys registered for school, and there was so many things I was trying to get lined up, and I told God, I was like, it would be awesome, if you could do it on this date on my calendar, because I could have everything lined up, I could have everything planned. And I told Chris, I was like, it'd be awesome. My oldest gets out of school the end of May. It would be awesome if we could move the end of May or the beginning of June. I'm like, that would just be so awesome. Well, every door was shut. And I thought, this is making it so much harder. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to think of it like that. This is a lesson. This is a test. I have to learn whatever I can through this test because that's why God's given it. If I don't learn anything, there's no point. You're just struggling. If you're not learning through your lessons and you're not learning through these things that God are taking you through, there's no point in it. You're just struggling. And I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to just struggle. I wanted to be learning something, and I wanted to stay close to God so that I can learn and Him to teach me. So it was the week before Roman got out of, no, it was the week of Roman got out of school. I got a call that Tuesday. There's a guy that went online, looked at our house, never been in it, never saw it physically, didn't know anything about it except what was online. He wanted the house, but he wanted it Friday. So we had from Wednesday to Friday to move out. Literally out of nowhere, this guy shows up and wants this house, sends them a check, pays for everything, but he wants to be in on the weekend. So we got moved out, and we actually found a place that was close to church, where we know the owners, and the rent and everything is much better, much easier. But I'm so thankful for the lesson that I learned in that, because it totally would have been not worthwhile if I hadn't been learning during that.